In a world where men often get blamed for a lot of things related to relationships, today we're going to talk about the things that women do that are incredibly toxic and sometimes even dangerous to men. I want to welcome back Natalie Lamb. She's been a guest on my podcast before. She is a life, relationship, and grief coach. She's written a couple books. She's got a couple courses, but most importantly, she has some very specialized training in working with adults who have manipulative skills, adults who are sexual predators, and and things related to cyber crimes and sex trafficking, but also teaching people about dangerous qualities in both men and women. And in the last episode that I interviewed you, Natalie, by the way, welcome to the High Ticket Woman. I should have said that right from the beginning. Welcome back.
Thank you, Debbie.
And that you're welcome. I said as we wrapped up that episode, I said, we've been talking about dangerous men, and we need to have an episode on dangerous women. And because I'm so curious as to what you have to say about that. So welcome back. I'm really excited about this episode because I think there's a wealth of things that need to be said about this. Um, and I don't know that anybody else is talking about it.
No, it's nothing. We rarely talk about it. I mean, I will preface it with we know that the rates of men are higher than women in some degrees, right? But when we talk about kind of personality disorders and those that cause a lot of harm, the numbers are a little closer if we look at it. And women don't get labeled the way men get labeled. And sometimes women are allowed to do sometimes some of the same things that we would call men out, and women get a pass on.
What
Um,
kind of 'Cause I definitely see that in my clinical world as well. Why is that, do you think?
I think it starts with mother, right? I think it starts with how we view mother, how we have kind of refrained from, and I don't want to say the word judging, but calling women out on things that are harmful, even in parenting. That we can talk a lot about how men are not there or not, active or doing the things. But what we know if we look at stats, women are the ones that are more responsible for harming children than men are. Um, yeah, women. You look at, and we'll go to the extreme of like causing the death of children. Women are much higher than men. And I think because a lot of times women do hold a lot, right? They do often carry a lot, that it's hard for us to say, you're a bad mom, right? And so when you translate that to then relationships and how we view it, we often are more willing to have a more negative view of men than we are of women. And the good guys, because there are a lot of good guys, and I think the good guys don't get talked about enough. The ones that shoulder a lot, that deal with these dangerous women, we don't talk about them a lot. We just talk about the other side. The other side gets way more press, right? And I think that that's partly why that, and when you look at criminality, yeah, men do more crimes than women, right? They're more violent than women. You have all of that. So I think it's the comparison that kind of messes us up some. But I don't think it means that we shouldn't talk about it and we shouldn't look into it.
So let's define the term dangerous, because I know there are women out there listening going, "Well, I'm not dangerous. I don't hurt people, physically, so I don't need to listen to this." So how do you define dangerous?
So I define dangerous by anyone that causes harm physically, sexually, financially, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually.
Yeah.
So it's a big gamut. It covers every area. And if we look just like physically or sexually, then women often skirt by, right? And they don't hold themselves accountable and they don't get called on the same things. We could talk about narcissism in men, which, now it's the key word, and it's everywhere. But we don't realize that women are the same, right? There's a huge amount of narcissistic women. There's a huge amount of sociopathic women. Now, their traits look different. And I think because the traits look different, we don't call it the same thing.
Okay, so you mean traits different they look different in women than they do in men.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about let's focus in on narcissism because I think that is so much more prevalent. At least the word is being used. The word is common way. What do the narcissistic traits in a woman look like as opposed to in a man?
So if we compare them kind of side by side, right? It's the same grandiosity, but a man is going to display his more sometimes aggressively. Like it's going to be out there, it's going to be known. Women know in order for them to get where they need to get, they sometimes have to downplay themselves. So even a very grandiose woman that's rising in the ladder and doing the same thing, she knows how to play the system, right? We know how to pull back more. We're socialized that way. So even if you have these traits that you have deficits, right? We look at personality disorders as deficits in their personality, they still have been socialized and they have paid attention to how women are socialized versus men. Women are the manipulation of women, right? That we do has almost looked like it's cute, right? You see it on the movies, they're playing it up, they're faking the tears, they're like it's not like the same manipulation that we see when we look at men.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And you know what I see a lot is I see and there's a spectrum here, right? So we're not going to say this every woman who does this would be considered dangerous,
Yes.
but but I think there is danger in what I'm about to describe. And that is the way that we as women can often let our emotions dictate our reality. So, or we can call this emotional reasoning. So when if I'm upset with something that you have said, then the fact that I'm upset means you done something wrong. I'm
Mhm.
gonna let my feelings make my decisions for me in the way that I react to you and in the way that you know, in the way that I think, in the way that I behave. So my emotions are in the driver's seat. When
Mhm.
in reality, I can be upset about something and completely misinterpret it. I can have jumped to conclusions and made assumptions. I could have completely got my facts wrong.
Right.
So my emotions aren't always an accurate reading of what has really transpired. But so much of the time when I work with women, that's not what's happening. We're not questioning or challenging our emotions. We're going, "I feel this way, therefore
Mhm.
something must have happened to make me feel this way, a or I wouldn't be feeling this way." Now that's a
Right.
lot of words to describe that, but can you talk to that? Because I think, when we're heading to dangerous territory, for women, it often starts with the way we handle our emotions.
Yeah, and I think it is when we have like life events that have happened, right? Be it traumas or just harms or sorrow. Um, we sometimes use it as, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but maybe I do. We sometimes use it in a way to manipulate.
Yeah.
And that manipulation, we have reasoned it to be okay. Right? Like you said, "Oh, you must have caused me to have this emotion that I don't like. You have put this on me, so now I can put it on you in
Mhm.
whatever way I dictate," right? But that's manipulation,
That is
right?
manipulation.
You're trying it is manipulation. Is you trying to move something in a way to get what you want, but not being authentic and honest about it.
Yeah.
And, and I think that with the emotional language that we use and we have given women are more emotional, right? Women, the emotion, the emotion, where every human has emotion.
Absolutely.
Men are as emotional, it just looks different. It just plays different. And you know this when you have your male clients, they are as emotional. They feel things too, right? They're not allowed to speak about that as much as women, but they feel they hurt, they have the same thing,
Absolutely.
right? And so women have used this little carrot to dangle around a lot. And we use it in a way of kind of talk about like the needy woman, right? That she is always needing someone to help her, to save her, to change your life, right? Tend to have a sad history or sad enough, right? Sometimes we over exaggerate that too, but it's like you're using that because you don't want to step up on your own 2 feet. It's nothing wrong with people helping, right? But that can't be your whole persona. You cannot always be the damsel in distress and then expect everyone around you to come running to save the day. And when they don't, then they become the bad guy. They become the one that's hurting you and harming you when there's some things you could do for yourself.
And the needy woman ends up in that codependent kind of relationship. If she's quote unquote lucky enough to find a guy who takes care of all her needs, they've got that very skewed relationship where she's so dependent on him for her happiness, and his happiness is now wrapped up in meeting all her needs. So, so unhealthy. Yeah.
So unhealthy. And we don't talk about that guy is the good guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the good guy.
I wanna say something right there because I'm married to an amazing, amazing man. I talk about him a lot in work that I do, and it would be so easy for me to take advantage of that because he is one of those kinds of men. You're nodding. And so I am very careful
Yeah.
to not just get so comfortable. Like, he's always anticipating my needs. I might be sitting watching TV, and he comes over to me, "Do you need anything?" Or he's bringing me coffee in the morning when I'm still in bed. I mean, like, you know, all day long, this man is taking care of me. But I often say to myself, "Debbie, don't make Jeff do what you're capable of doing for yourself, because
Yes.
you end up being in this relationship where you just expect him to serve you hand and foot because he's willing." And I don't see that as making him weak because he's willing to do that. He's just a good guy.
Just a good guy. Yeah, I have one of those too. And it is in that. Oh, it's amazing. It's the best thing ever. Yes. But I agree with you 100% that I have to take my responsibility and hold the line and take care of him too. It's the push to take care of him too, because these guys, the good ones, right? The ones that are caring and nurturing, right? That love to be there for somebody and not out of a bad space, right? Not out of trying to control you or lean you, but just a kind, nurturing man. They find these women and these women manipulate them and harm them. And then the woman gets a pass a lot of times. And this guy is sitting there like, what the heck happened? And go ahead.
What kind of harm do you tend to see in men that are with a needy woman? Like, what's the damage that you tend to see?
You tend to see that they become very suffocating. They keep a lot of it inside though,
Yeah.
right? They're waiting for an opportunity to share. This is heavy. She's heavy, right? Because like with the needy woman in particular, it's not so much outward things that you can say, oh, they did this, this, this. It's a combination of so much that you just weigh the person down to where they can't breathe. And then you take away their sense of self because they know their needs will never be met. They know that they'll never matter in the relationship, right? So they walk around in this space of not mattering, no one cares about me, feeling dejected and feeling suffocated
And lonely. Yeah.
and lonely.
So lonely. Yeah. I had men cry, in session with me because I'm the first person to say, "You know what? You are a good husband. You are a good man." And they just start crying because they've never heard that from their spouse. They've never heard that. I'm thinking about the opposite kind of woman that I also run into, and you may have a term for it. I call it the demanding woman.
Mm.
There's this the opposite end of the spectrum is the woman who's just she's never happy. Nothing's ever good enough. Yeah. Talk to me about I guess about that kind of woman. 'Cause I think I
Right,
a lot of emotional danger in that kind of a dynamic.
yeah, but it kind of goes with the needy woman, the demanding one. It just looks a little different. The demanding one, it tends to be way more aggressive, right?
Yes.
She's gonna put it out there. She'll be the one that you could pinpoint stuff. You could go out to dinner with them as a couple, and you
Yeah.
could watch her almost decimate him,
Yes.
right? And he's sitting there taking it, being quiet, not wanting to cause a whole lot of ruffles. But it's, get this, go get that, go to the car for me, pick this up. Oh, he never did this. It's the constant berating, but never appreciating. Is that but it's aggressive.
It
It's
is.
yelling, it's screaming. It's,
It's
the emotional
offensive.
effect.
It's yelling, it's condescension, it's sarcasm. And the crazy thing about this is a lot of times what I see is those women, once they've vented and gotten over their anger in that moment, they expect their guy to just bounce back right away. Or they have some sort of excuse. Again, it's put on the man. I wouldn't be this way. I wouldn't be so angry if you were meeting my needs.
Right, right. I mean, again, manipulation, right?
Yes.
Women can be very manipulative. Yeah. Like it's cruel, but we don't often call it cruel,
Yeah.
but it's cruel behavior,
It is cruel. Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And then you look at, and I think we don't talk about, as far as the other different types of like dangerous women of um like the daddy's girl, right? The one that is looking for everything her father didn't give her. And you want this man to become your parent figure, right? And it can have this lopsidedness in the relationship, but you're holding him up against a different standard.
Is this the woman who wants to be taken care of? Is that what
She
you're saying?
wants to be taken care of, but it's a little different in the fact that she's still very childlike.
Mm,
So she becomes like a little girl, right? Wanting daddy's attention. Let me do this to get your approval. Let me do this in order for you to take care of me still, right? But never growing into a confident woman, never being able to do things without all of the extras, right? Like we're grown people. No one's gonna pat you on the back for every little thing you do, right? That shouldn't be required either. You should be able to come in, handle whatever your job is in the house, take care of it without the husband having to say, oh man, yeah, you did this, and list everything you did through the day, or you're falling and collapsing and throwing a tantrum. It's too much. But what does it do to the guy, right? Like you completely, again, devalue him. You make him work overtime for some hole that's the shape of your dad that he could never fill anyway. You need to go get a little therapy.
yeah, you need to work up the issues that you have with your dad. But, that there's truth in the fact that we tend to find a partner
Yes.
who resembles a parent that we have, you
Issues
know,
with.
the unresolved issues with. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
But
In that,
yeah.
go ahead. But in
Well, I
that,
just
you don't get to then make them responsible for your healing.
right, right. It well, all of these things, all of these circle back to stop pinning your happiness on someone else, on your partner. Stop expecting your partner to make you happy. Whether you're a needy woman or a demanding woman or a daddy's girl, I'm sure there's other types here that we're gonna talk about. It all circles back around to I'm responsible for me. If I'm not happy with the life that I have, what am I gonna do about it? I can't expect my husband to do that for me. That's my
Yeah.
job.
It's my job.
So
And
we've
it's
got
owning it.
right. We've got the needy woman, the demanding woman, daddy's girl. What other types are there?
So the other types we have, and these start getting a little bit more uh harder, right? The emotionally disordered woman, which is where we kind of go into one that really does have some mental illness. But this is also a person who's not taking care of it, who's using it, right, in a way in order to be able to control others. It's understanding that with you know, you need to be very gentle in this because it's not like damning people that have mental illness, but it is recognizing that there are a lot of people out there that refuse to take care of their mental health, right? And they will use it in a way that is very harmful to others. And then we're talking about things that make you very harmful to people, right? When we talk about narcissism and um psychopathy and you know antisocial behavior and all of those, what we know is really no cure for those. They are there, right? They're lifelong, and there's nothing you can do about them. Those are those chronic things that you have to look into, especially if you're, and I'm speaking to men, if men are out there listening, is like, is this somebody I want to partner with? Because when you partner with someone like that, you take on whatever their thing is, and it becomes exhausting.
Exhausting is an understatement. I think of you know, the mood disorders can get stabilized with medication, but I think same thing with anxiety disorders. But I think of the personality disorders, right? Narcissism, histrionic personality disorder, and especially borderline personality disorder. And I want to say something to people briefly about this. I did a social media post, a brief one on this. A lot of times, borderline personality disorder (BPD) can get misdiagnosed as bipolar because there's a lot of mood swinging. But the type of mood swinging that we see with borderline isn't as up and down, depressive, manic swinging. It's more like a side to side. Like I think of a pendulum swinging
Mhm.
one end of the spectrum to the other, where on the one end, I love you, you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and on the other end, I hate you, I can't stand you, I don't want you in my life at all. And the whole disorder is characterized by an inability to regulate your emotions. So when I think of emotionally disordered women, I mean, obviously the mood disorders play into this, you know, depression and bipolar, but I think of women
Right.
who really, really struggle to not a little thing and see it as an act of betrayal.
Mhm.
You know, I've worked with women who struggled with this and they are hypersensitive to the things that most people would just say, "That's annoying, but I can overlook that." But with someone who's struggling in this way, everything, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 20.
Yeah.
And so that hurt builds up to the point of rage. The rage is released, the partner is just like, "What have I done? I don't even know all I did was leave my socks on the floor." Like, I'm not the only guy to do that. Like, where's this rage coming from?
Yeah.
And it again, I just think it's so much damage being done when you talk about emotionally disordered. That's what comes to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, we don't talk about histrionics, right? And the scope of what that does, um, the exaggeration, the instability, all of those things, it's very damning to relationships, and men do get to choose that I don't wanna be in that, I mean, I use the same person when I talk about the dangerous man and most of the time I'm teaching this in a way of pay attention to this before you get involved, right? Like that's the kind of preventive education that I give is like preventive, like before you get involved, think about this. Now, if you're already there, then there's other maneuvers we have to do in order for you to see if this is something you really should stay in. But we have to pay attention to the fact that there are people out there that have fixed personalities that are never changing. And those fixed personalities have deficits that never ever are going to be filled. And you as a person could never fill it for them. And you get to choose that that's not a person I want to be with.
Yeah, in other words, you can't fix them.
In other words,
Are what they are. No amount of love and patience is going to change this about them. Yeah.
nothing. Yeah. And that's, we have to be honest with that because it's a lot of the population. Way more than what we want to admit. It's a lot of the population that are very disordered.
Yeah. We do, from a preventative standpoint, you need to be very choosy about the person you sign on for life with, right? Like if you see marriage as a lifelong commitment, which I think most people do, um, you need to put a lot of time and effort into really get to know that person before you make that very, very serious lifelong commitment. Because once you're in it, what you have is what you have. But so much of the time what I see with women especially, I know there are men that do this too though, is they sign on or they sign up for the relationship because it has so much potential. We
Mhm.
bury the potential of somebody, and then we're so shocked when they don't live up to that.
Up to yes. And it's the potential that I've created in my head
Yeah,
that
yeah,
then would
maybe
perhaps
fantasy based, yes.
right? And I always say with my couples, because I do pre-marriage coaching as well. And I always say, if this is the height of where they are, could you live with this? Because you have no guarantee of anyone ever changing.
Out of
So,
yeah, exact same thing to people.
right? Like this is what you got.
Yes, you still want it.
Right? But it's us being honest and looking beyond the veil. It's going into the darker recesses of each other to see what's really underneath. And we sometimes don't do that. We accept that front shell. We're like, this feels good, it looks good, and that's all I'm gonna see. And you don't realize that once you get in your home, what you really are dealing with is what's behind the veil.
Yeah, so true. So true. And, you've got a good guy, I've got a good guy. When you actually do the work ahead of time to make sure that this is a partner you can really truly be happy with, what you end up with is so amazing. But unfortunately, we jump in a lot of times prematurely. We let our emotions again, we let our emotions make the decisions for us. And our head is, I don't know, taking a back seat? So there's all these little yellow and red caution flags popping up in the relationship, but we're just pushing them down, overlooking them, going, "Oh, it'll be better once," or "This is a one-off," or and making excuses. So,
Right.
are there more types of women that we need to cover here? Needy,
Yes.
demanding.
So we say the addict. We don't talk about women addicts enough. There are a lot of them out there, and a lot of them look like it's okay. The rates of alcoholism in women has skyrocketed, and we act like it's not as dangerous as it is. Everything is, unlimited mimosas and let's just have a drink. And I'm drinking every day. I'm drinking
Day
2 or 3 day drinking. I mean, it's become, but it's very socially acceptable, especially for women. It is put out there as this is the thing to do, and we don't realize how many women have become alcoholics.
Yeah, without realizing it because all their peers are doing it. I have a number of 30-something female clients, and this is what they do, like, on the weekends, starting Friday night all the way through, Sunday night, just hitting the alcohol so hard. And I know as a 55-year-old woman, that's gonna catch up with them fast. But because they still feel young and they still look
Yeah.
beautiful, they're not realizing the outward effects of that yet. It's
Yeah.
it it's affecting them inwardly, but it hasn't caught up with them outwardly yet. But it's damaging to their I mean, these are single women I'm talking about, see, and
Mhm.
it's damaging their ability to find a serious committed guy because the social circles they're hanging out in, it's all very casual. It's all centered around drinking and partying and having a good time.
Time. Yeah. And then, I mean, we don't talk about like gambling. We don't talk about sex because there's a lot of women addicts of sex. They use sex and manipulate men with it, and harm them, right? Overspending. Like you can have a serious addiction to buying stuff and your credit cards are high as the sky. You look good, right? You're pretty cute. But look at what you have and how that's gonna then affect your relationships and your family. And women often get away with it and it's not called out for what it is. Um, Perfectionism, chaos.
Food, chaos. Yeah, drama. You can be addicted to drama.
Man, and women love, right? And it's almost like we have seen it as this is a part of being a woman.
Yeah.
To create drama, to love that, to feed off of that. No, that's
Yeah.
not good.
I think of reality TV shows that really feed and play to that need that yeah. And I know there are men that love these types of shows too, but I think of Desperate Housewives and shows like that, that
Yeah.
they play to that need within people, and it carries over into the relationships, and then a good guy comes along and they're bored.
Yes.
That is a common theme that I see now. The good guy who will treat you decently, who works hard, who makes a great living, who's gonna be an amazing father, he's boring.
It's boring because you need the drama. You need the chaos. You almost are seeking it, right? To the point to create it in order to keep you at this, it keeps your emotions here. Like you want to always be on 10.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to live like that.
yeah. I wonder why that is. I mean, I definitely see it, but but not being that way, it's hard for me to fathom what it is about that that's so attractive to people. Like, I like peace in my life. I don't like chaos and conflict. I do my best to try to avoid those things, but there are people who are very much drawn to that.
But you realize that when you are the chaos creator, you're always in the driver's seat.
Ah, yeah. Interesting, yeah.
You always get to dictate everything that's going on around you. Because a lot of chaos creators also become victims. So they do this triangle, right? They bait you in, get you super upset, try to get a reaction out of you, and then they want to go into victim. And then that's how it goes, right? And so they just keep that going and you're spinning because you're like, what is going on? But it's the same scenario if you pay
Really?
attention.
And they're so good at making you feel like it's you.
So good at it. You created all of this, and then you sit back and like you're looking at everything unraveling. And that's part of the high is that you are that power person.
Interesting. I'd never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. It is a power-based situation. You wanna be in charge. And of course, if all you've known in your life is chaos and drama, you don't know anything else, so
Yeah.
might as well be the one who's creating it, because then at least
Right.
you're pulling the strings. Yeah, fascinating. Wow. Alright,
Yeah.
let's keep are there more?
So keep it going. So the violent woman, and we don't talk about the amount of women that physically harm men, right? Because men tend not to talk about it because it's embarrassing, it's emasculating, it is all of that. But women, because women often, unless they become, extremely violent, because men do get killed by women as well. But it's not going to be to the same degree, right? If a woman punches you and a man punches you, it's going to look very different. So women can become it very I had a one client and she just constantly felt like she could beat this man, right? And it was a bigger dude, right? So she was like, "Well, you're not really hurt." But no, you are really hurt because you don't have the right to put your hands on people. Because if it was reversed, we would be saying something very different.
Now, violence, are we defining violence as just being physically violent to another person? What about the woman who throws things?
Oh, yes.
Like, I've had female clients or men who are married to women who, she's throwing breakables, yeah, scissors at, things. And and you're right, the issue isn't whether or not he was physically hurt or not. Being on the receiving end of that is horrible.
It's horrible. But even with and we talk about kind of the demanding being aggressive, it's kind of falls into that same way of the criticizing, the belittling, the, calling you out your name, cursing you out, um, always irritable, always, becoming um having anger outburst and doing all that's a form of violence. We don't usually call that violence. But if you think about what it does to your nervous system, when someone puts you in that situation and you're kind of caged in, it's a very harmful act that you have to constantly stomach. But women, we have given ourselves permission to scream and yell and belittle. Throwing things, men you tend more of like punching walls and stuff. You don't get that from women as much. But it just being cruel. Like you don't have a right to be cruel to people on purpose
For any reason.
for any reason.
We have to stop justifying our horrific behaviors on on the way other people treat us. But, so much of the time, I mean, I really believe in the golden rule, right? Treat people the way you want it treated. So, but
Absolutely.
instead, what I see with people is I treat you the way you treat me. You diss me, I'll diss you. You respect me, I'll respect you. And the problem with that, of course, is you're waiting for the other person to step up and be the bigger person. And when they aren't, you're justifying your equally rude, equally cruel, equally inappropriate, equally toxic behaviors, getting away with that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's but will we be honest and call things as they are? With all toxic relationships and harmful people, the reason oftentimes they get away with it is because we relabel the person on the other end that's taken their abuse, right? We call it something else. We relabel it, we give it excuses, we paint it in nicer colors for them to get away with it. And so when they have a lifelong kind of treatment of doing this to people. A lot of these, we're talking about women in particular, they've been doing it since grade school. They've been harmful to their friends. They were,
Angry.
beast in the house, the mean girls, right? And think about how we have acted like the mean girls are ha ha ha. No, you're a horrible person.
Yeah.
You don't have the right.
You're right, it does go. I mean, I look back to my childhood and some of the bullying that I experienced, and it was mostly girls. It was mostly girls, yeah.
Yeah. But we call it something different. And then they become the women that carry that out,
Yeah,
right? And they become the same bullies in their house. They bully their children, they bully their spouse, right? They bully their coworkers,
yeah,
and we call it something different.
we call it something different. And, you know, at the core of all this, we're talking about a deeply insecure and deeply unhappy person, but none of us have the right to take out our unhappiness and our insecurities on other people. And this is why you and I will never be out of work. I mean, I would gladly the world be fixed of these problems and I go find an equator. So I'm not saying I'm gleeful that these problems exist. I'm just realistic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other person we go ahead.
Oh yeah, keep going. You're gonna answer my question.
So the other person is the stalker.
Right.
And women stalkers, especially now with social media, um, we act as if it's okay for you to jump in people's DMs, to trace their phones, to follow them where they're going, to call their friends and ask where they're going to be at. With stalking, you often also get a lot of paranoia. You get people that have fantasy relationships, and a stalker can be they're so detrimental because you never know where they're going to pop up, right? My daughter, she's in her early 20s, her best friend who's a guy, he just met this woman and he was, kind of dating her. And he's telling my daughter about, yeah, she tracks me. She knows where I'm at. When he came over here, where are you? Why are you there? Like that is harmful behavior when you act like that.
Absolutely. So how does that play out in a relationship? Are we talking about women who are obsessive about a man they don't actually have a relationship with, but want to have a relationship with?
So it can be either or. It could be they had a relationship and he no longer wants to be in the relationship. And so you see this aggressive fantasy thing. No, we are going to be together. We are good. You deserve to be here with me. But then you also sometimes have it within the relationship where they have to always know where you are. If you don't text them back immediately, then there's chaos to be dealt with. They'll show up at your job. They'll interrupt dinners. They'll come to your family home when you're there just to see your mom to take care of her. It's this constant need to be always in your space and know where you are. Even if you're in a relationship with someone, no one owes you every second of their day.
Interesting. So would you say this plays out? 'Cause sometimes I see this in a relationship where maybe we can't totally label it as stalking, but when a woman comes into a relationship and she's already got a lot of trust issues, so now she's really controlling about where her guy is. So she's texting him all the time. Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? Why didn't you text me back? How come it took you an hour to call me back? We're same kind of behaviors, but would we label that differently or would we say no?
I don't think we wouldn't. I think we would call it it's a stalkerish. Yeah.
Wow. 8 different kinds of women, dangerous types of women, and all of us need to really take a deep dive and look at ourselves and go, "Is there a little piece of me in one or more of these 8 types?"
Yeah.
Because to one degree or another, when I look at myself, there have been times in my life when I was needy. There have been times in my life when I was demanding. There I don't know that I've ever been an addict, but that's something for me to assess. Like, have I relied on something too much to make me happy and then justified, you know, who I was and what I did as a result? I think there's something in there for every woman to take a look at.
Take a look at, right?
Yeah.
And I will run through these other ones really fast. You have the woman with the hidden light, right? You don't really know what's going on. Very secretive. You don't know about their past. You don't know what they're doing presently. And with that, when you're into a relationship with them, you really don't know who they could have been. And there could be thrill seeking, there could be drug addiction, there could be prostitution, there could be all kinds of things wrapped in there, right? And you never know. You pay attention to the fact you often are gone, but you never tell me where. This secretive thing about you. I ask you a direct question and you're always evasive, right? It's you're gone for 2 or 3 days, and then I'm like, where have you been? And it doesn't net out. Like, what's going on with you? That no one knows about, right? And then you ask their friends, and they're like, "Yeah, they always been secretive, right? I don't really know that much about them either." Those are things you have to pay attention to because you're living double lives, right? Those are hard to find.
Or angry when you do question them. So then you back
Absolutely, absolutely. You don't want to deal with it, so you just like, okay, or you just take what they say, so you don't have to go through all of the ups and downs and the ins and outs, right? Um, The other one is the woman that loves the bad guys. You like the guy that mistreats you. You like the guy that's not gonna take good care of you, the one that's emotionally unavailable or abusive, and you find a good guy. And again, we said this earlier, he's boring. Yeah, he's not the one I want. And you use the good guy to fill you up, but you're never gonna really be committed to this guy because you need the high of the bad guy. And you've been jumping back and forth probably since teenagers.
right. And I think there's something fundamentally, I mean, women who do that are really saying without saying, I I don't want a serious committed relationship because they're always gravitating towards men who can't give them that.
Yeah.
So whether that's a self-worth issue or some, who knows what, that's what they're really communicating. I
Yeah.
want this, yeah, I want this relationship that's not gonna actually go anywhere. So I'm constantly picking men who aren't gonna meet what I say my needs are. Yeah.
Yeah. But the guy is feeling very used because you did use
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
It's also good guys out who might be listening. Hang in there because
Hang in there.
there are healthy women, believe it or not. There are women who appreciate you. I promise you, who are looking for you frantically and you just haven't met each other yet.
You just haven't met each other yet. And the very last woman is the predator. And she falls into the same thing as generally into that she's looks for prey. She goes out, she's for the hunt. She decimates, she knows men. She can read them like nobody's business. She knows how to feel their needs. She knows how to play to the ego, and then it's the takedown. But it's orchestrated, it's on purpose.
Yeah. But so this woman has had, uh, I'm going to say almost 100% of the time, I can a- always, I can know that this woman has had an extremely dysfunctional childhood for her to become a predator. Is that
Is
some
it
spirit?
well, you know what? I think this is tends to be the woman that really probably falls more into being a sociopath.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that's who they are, right? It is that sixth sense. It is the
Yeah.
manipulation beyond a normal thing. It's not just the excuse.
Do you believe sociopaths are born though, or do you believe that there's been some sort of lack of attachment from birth that has disrupted the normal, you know, human attachment that occurs between an infant and a caregiver?
So I
This
think
could probably be a whole nother podcast episode.
he was holding the podcast, right? I
Yeah.
think that a lot of them are born.
Really?
The last certification I did with it, and it's Dr. Lester, who was like the renowned psychologist, actually teaches psychologists how to do a personality disorder. And the last study they saw was 80, it was 80 something percent is genetic.
Really? So neural path do we attribute this then just to the neural pathways that get changed in an adult through their own life experiences that then are now being passed down genetically? Is that
So how did it start? Like who was the first? In that genetic pool. That's interesting. Right. Who
yeah,
was the first
the first
predator in that
predator
genetic
neural
pool?
well, the reason why I say that is I don't believe God created sociopaths, right? So somebody, I don't believe God created sociopathy. So where did that originally form, right? Somebody made some conscious decisions in their life and we know that neural pathways can get changed in the brain. So how that then affects the genetics, of the next generation, I think they're still probably figuring all that out. But
They probably are. I mean, it's just to get the brain scanning and being able to
yeah,
look at it in a way we never were able to before. It's a lot of unknowns out there. But,
yeah,
as I always tell people who have to deal with people, the why matters to us on this other side, but in real life, feet on the ground, moving around people, it doesn't matter, right? What matters is who they are, how they treat you, what their traits are, um,
yeah,
and the effects, yeah, that you're gonna deal with. Because when we get into it's this because, then I'm already giving you an excuse, then I've already given you a pass, right? Now, that's not to say, and I'm not being hard line to where we don't get to have reasoning for some of our bad behaviors, right? But there is a difference between bad behaviors occasionally and patterns of behavior. And what I'm talking about is patterns of behavior. It's consistent. It actually, if you looked at their life, you would see a consistent pattern of doing harm to people. And it's not
yeah,
one-offs at all, right? We all have
yeah,
mistreated somebody. Yeah, but what's the pattern? And that's what you look at to determine, is this a
yeah.
person that you want to have in your life, or is this a person you need to stay away from?
Yeah, absolutely. This is so, so useful, Natalie. I can't thank you enough for coming back and doing this with me. I hope that every woman listens really takes this to heart and doesn't just focus on the traits in men that can be dangerous, but takes a hard look at herself, as we need to do and says, do I have traits that are dangerous to my relationship, dangerous to the man that I love, or will be potentially dangerous to a future man? And what am I willing to do about that? So,
Yes.
Natalie, thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having me, Debbie.
So, your website will be listed in the description, just like with the first episode. Everybody reach out to Nellie. She's extremely knowledgeable, extremely well trained. Um, and again, I can't thank you enough. We're 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 gonna do some more things together, Natalie.
Yes, yes. Let's
Well,
do it.
we'll talk off camera or talk off recording about that. But yeah, this is great. All right, ladies, that's it for today's episode. Look forward to seeing you next week as we talk more in this season 2 about all things relationship oriented. How not just to be a high ticket woman, but to have your high ticket relationship. I'll see you next week.